It all began with a signal, faint but undeniable, echoing across the vast expanse of space. Earth, for the first time in its long history, was not alone. The message wasn't a traditional form of communication, like radio waves or a beacon, but rather a sophisticated set of energy patterns that hinted at the presence of an advanced civilization. It arrived one chilly autumn evening, subtly altering the course of humanity's destiny. Dr. Amelia Harlow, a leading scientist in the field of astrophysics, was the first to detect the signal. At first, she dismissed it as a glitch or perhaps the tail end of a comet passing by. But after weeks of analysis, it became clear, this was no anomaly. The signal had structure, a kind of purpose behind it that could not be ignored. She immediately informed the world's space agencies. Within days, a global collaboration was born, and Earth's brightest minds were brought together for a singular mission, to decipher the mysterious signal. The UN's top scientists, military strategists, and government officials convened in an emergency summit. Across every major continent, in every bustling metropolis, there was a sense of urgency and anticipation. Nations that had once been divided over petty differences now stood united with a single, collective purpose. Humanity was being called to the stars, whether it was ready or not. But while Earth worked on understanding the signal, the world's population reacted with a mix of awe and fear. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars in wonder. The idea that we might one day reach them felt like a dream, a myth passed down in stories. But now, the dream was about to become a reality. The question that lingered in the hearts of all, was this the beginning of something incredible, or would humanity be consumed by forces far beyond its understanding? As the months passed, Earth's best minds decoded more and more of the signal. It was clear that it wasn't a simple message, it was an invitation. The civilization behind it was ancient, having long ago transcended its physical form and now existing as an energy-based entity, one that had scattered its wisdom and knowledge across the stars. Its purpose was not to dominate or conquer, but to offer humanity a choice, to ascend, to evolve, or to be left behind as the rest of the universe moved forward. To some, this was an opportunity to be embraced. To others, it was a dangerous gamble, a challenge to human identity. Would humanity lose itself in the vast unknown, or would it seize the chance to become something greater? The moment of decision was fast approaching. Dr. Harlow, the unlikely hero at the heart of this story, stood on the precipice of discovery. She wasn't just decoding an alien message, she was unraveling the very fabric of humanity's future. What she discovered next would change everything. The signal was not only an invitation, it was also a warning. Earth was not the first civilization to receive such an offer. And not all those who had taken the path had survived. As tensions rose, the global leaders called for a unified response. After heated debates and sleepless nights, the world's governing bodies made a historic decision: humanity would send a ship, a colossal vessel designed by the world's brightest engineers, to follow the signal. But there was a catch. The journey would take years, decades, perhaps, and it would require the best and brightest from every corner of Earth to be selected for the mission. This was no simple voyage. It was humanity's last chance at survival. And so, the dawn of a new era began. Dr. Harlow was among the first to volunteer, driven not just by her knowledge, but by an insatiable curiosity. She was aware of the risks, but something deep inside told her that humanity was destined for something more than the confines of its tiny world. A new chapter had begun, one that would either elevate humanity to the stars or condemn it to extinction. The choice, ultimately, was in the hands of those brave enough to seek the truth. As the world watched, the launch of the Odyssey ship, the vessel that would carry humanity's hopes and dreams to the stars, took place. It wasn't just a scientific endeavor, it was a symbol of unity, of a species overcoming its divisions to reach beyond its limits. And as the Odyssey disappeared into the black void of space, a new chapter began, and Earth, for the first time in its history, was about to step into the vast unknown of the cosmos. The Odyssey sat on the launch pad, its massive structure casting a shadow over the excited crowd gathered at the International Spaceport. For months, engineers and astronauts had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment, and now it had finally arrived. Dr. Amelia Harlow stood among them, her heart pounding as the countdown began. The moment the engines roared to life, propelling the colossal ship into the sky, there was a collective sigh of relief. It was as if the entire world held its breath, hoping that this journey, the first of its kind, would be the beginning of something extraordinary. On the screens in front of her, Amelia saw Earth shrink away, becoming just another star in the distance. She couldn't help but marvel at the sight, a view few humans had ever seen. But her thoughts were still on the message, the unknown civilization, and the dangers that lurked in the dark corners of the galaxy. For the crew aboard the Odyssey, the mission was clear: follow the signal, decode its message, and discover the truth behind the invitation. But there was something more, something unspoken, that weighed heavily on their minds. The warning. The civilizations that had failed before them. The possibility that humanity's reach might exceed its grasp. Would Earth be another cautionary tale, a footnote in the annals of galactic history? Or would they succeed where others had faltered? As the ship sailed deeper into space, the crew settled into a routine. They spent their days monitoring the ship's systems, refining their understanding of the signal, and training for the unknown challenges ahead. Dr. Harlow found herself drawn to the ship's advanced communications array, spending hours poring over the data in the hopes of finding more clues. The signal, though it had been deciphered in part, was far from fully understood. There were gaps, hidden layers of meaning, that they hadn't yet unlocked. And time was running out. The further they traveled from Earth, the more isolated the crew became. They had no direct communication with their home planet, the vast distance between them cutting off any immediate contact. Earth was now a distant memory, its existence reduced to fleeting messages that could take months to deliver. In a way, the crew had become the last hope of humanity, a small group of explorers, alone in the vast expanse of space, tasked with unraveling a mystery that could determine the fate of their species. The days blended into weeks, and the weeks into months. Tensions began to build among the crew. Isolation, the monotony of space travel, and the unknown nature of their mission were starting to take a toll. Some began to question the wisdom of their undertaking. Were they truly ready for what lay ahead? Had humanity made a grave mistake in trusting the signal? What if the civilization behind it was not as benevolent as they had hoped? One evening, as Amelia stared out into the endless black, the voice of Captain Elijah Winters broke through the silence. He was a seasoned veteran of space travel, having commanded several missions to Mars and beyond. But this journey was unlike any he had ever undertaken. He, too, had his doubts. "We're heading into the unknown," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "None of us know what's waiting out there. The signal, the warning, we can't ignore it. If we're to survive, we'll have to face whatever comes with everything we've got." His words resonated with Amelia. It wasn't just about exploration anymore. It was about survival, about facing the consequences of humanity's ambition. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something greater. The invitation wasn't just about survival. It was a test of humanity's potential to grow, to evolve, to transcend its limitations. And it was a test they couldn't afford to fail. The next few months were filled with long hours of research, spacewalks to maintain the ship's exterior, and attempts to improve their understanding of the signal. But then, one day, something changed. The ship's sensors picked up an anomaly in the space around them, a shift, an energy signature that didn't belong. It was faint, barely detectable, but unmistakable. A new signal, more refined than the first, began to emanate from somewhere ahead. It was different this time. The signal was no longer a mere series of patterns, but something with more direction, more purpose. Amelia and the crew realized they were getting closer to their destination, and to the truth behind the mysterious civilization. The tension among the crew surged as they prepared for the next phase of their journey. There was no turning back now. The unknown lay ahead, and humanity's future rested in the hands of those aboard the Odyssey. As the new signal pulsed through the ship's systems, a sense of dread and excitement hung in the air. They had crossed the threshold into the deep unknown, and what they would find there could either uplift humanity or condemn it forever. The adventure had only just begun. As the Odyssey glided deeper into the uncharted regions of space, the new signal grew stronger, more distinct. Each pulse of energy seemed to beckon them forward, like a cosmic guide urging them towards something far beyond their comprehension. It was a strange sensation. The closer they got, the more the crew felt a growing connection to whatever intelligence lay at the heart of the signal. For some, it was like a whisper at the edge of their consciousness, faint but persistent. For others, it was a sense of impending revelation, as if they were on the brink of something that would forever change the course of human history. Dr. Harlow stood before the ship's communications console, her fingers poised over the controls as she analyzed the newly acquired data. The signal was now unmistakable. It was no longer just a pattern, but a complex communication. It was clear that the entity behind it was aware of the Odyssey's presence, and it was responding, almost as though it was guiding them to a destination, a final meeting point. But what would that meeting entail? The crew gathered in the ship's central command room for an emergency briefing. Captain Elijah Winters had ordered everyone to be prepared for the next phase of the mission, whatever that might be. The mood was a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. No one could ignore the weight of what they were about to face. They had crossed the boundary of human knowledge. Everything they had learned, everything they had assumed about the universe, was now up for re-evaluation. What would they discover? Was this contact going to be peaceful, or would they be forced to defend humanity's place in the cosmos? "We're entering an area of space unlike anything we've encountered," Captain Winters said, his voice steady but filled with an edge of caution. "We have no idea what lies ahead. All we know is that this signal is not coming from natural sources. And the longer we follow it, the more likely it is that we're about to make contact with an intelligence far beyond our own." Dr. Harlow had been working around the clock to understand the nuances of the signal. She had uncovered one crucial detail: the entity behind it was not a single being, but rather a collective consciousness, one that could communicate through vast networks of energy. It was a civilization that had long abandoned physical form, transcending the limitations of biology in favor of a more abstract existence. The implications were staggering. A species that had conquered not only space but the very nature of life itself. As they neared the source, the Odyssey was suddenly rocked by a strange vibration, a ripple through space that felt like a shockwave. It wasn't a physical disturbance, but rather a distortion in the fabric of spacetime itself. The crew members grabbed hold of their seats as the ship stabilized. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the ship's systems seemed to hesitate, as though even they were struggling to keep up with the strange forces at play. "We're not alone anymore," Dr. Harlow muttered under her breath. The signal had intensified, and now, it was as though they were surrounded. It wasn't just a transmission they were receiving, it felt like the very space around them was alive, vibrating with energy. Captain Winters' voice crackled through the comm system, calm but urgent. "Prepare yourselves. We're about to make contact." Without warning, a massive structure appeared on the ship's sensors, a vast, spherical object, millions of miles in diameter. It hovered in space ahead of them, pulsing with the same energy that had guided them to this point. The object was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It didn't resemble any known space station or planet. It was a construction of pure energy, its surface shimmering and shifting like liquid metal. The signal emanated from this structure, and as the Odyssey approached, the crew felt the unmistakable sensation of being drawn toward it, as if it had a gravitational pull of its own. This is it," Dr. Harlow said, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the shimmering orb on the screen. "We're about to meet them." The moment the Odyssey crossed the threshold of the energy field surrounding the object, the ship's communication systems went into overdrive. A flood of data overwhelmed the consoles, and strange symbols and shapes flashed across the screens. The crew was silent, unable to comprehend the deluge of information. But then, one final pulse of energy shot out from the object, and the ship's systems suddenly settled. "Initiating communication protocols," Dr. Harlow declared. She focused all her attention on the console, her fingers flying over the keys. The ship speakers crackled, and then, for the first time, a voice, not a human voice, but something far more ethereal and distant, echoed through the command room. "Welcome, travelers of Earth," the voice said. It was a strange combination of sound and thought, as though the words were not spoken, but directly transmitted into their minds. "We have been waiting for you." The crew sat frozen, stunned by the magnitude of the encounter. They had crossed an unimaginable threshold, and now, they were speaking with a being that existed beyond the boundaries of their understanding. The message was clear: humanity was no longer an isolated species, but a part of something far greater, an intricate web of cosmic forces that stretched across the galaxy. "Do not fear," the voice continued, "you are not alone. The path you have chosen will lead to a future beyond your wildest dreams, or to a demise beyond comprehension. The choice is yours, Earth." The silence that followed was deafening. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. The message was clear, but the implications were staggering. They had been chosen, but for what purpose? And what did the entity mean by demise beyond comprehension? Was this a test, or something more sinister? The Odyssey had crossed the threshold into a new era, but what would be the cost? The crew of the Odyssey sat in stunned silence as the ethereal voice continued to resonate in their minds. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity, each person struggling to process the gravity of the moment. First contact had been made, but the being that had spoken to them, a vast, incomprehensible intelligence, had offered them more than just communication. It had extended a challenge. A trial. Captain Winters was the first to break the silence. His face, usually composed, now showed signs of deep thought. "The choice is ours, it seems," he said slowly. "We are being tested." Amelia Harlow stood beside him, her brow furrowed in concern. "Tested in what way? What is the path they spoke of? And why did they mention a demise beyond comprehension?" Her voice trembled slightly, despite her efforts to maintain her usual calm. She had dedicated her life to understanding the cosmos, yet nothing had prepared her for this. Whatever was happening, it was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. "Perhaps the test is one of our potential," Winters continued. "Perhaps it's asking if we are worthy to join whatever greater civilization lies beyond. The warning, it suggests that not all who've received the invitation have survived. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next." The voice, as if hearing their deliberations, spoke again. "The trial will test your species' worthiness. We have seen civilizations that have perished in their attempts to ascend. Some failed because of greed, others because of fear. Some were destroyed by forces they could not understand. But you, humanity, you have potential to either become a part of something greater or to be lost forever. Your trial begins now." A pulse of energy shot through the ship, and the command room lights flickered. For a brief moment, everything seemed to distort, reality itself bending, the walls warping, the air rippling. The ship groaned under the strain, its systems faltering. The crew members clung to their seats as the ship was subjected to a sudden and violent shift in spacetime. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The ship was still. But something had changed. Outside the viewports, the once immense energy structure was gone. In its place, a swirling vortex of light and shadow hung in the void, a rift in space, its edges alive with energy. It was both mesmerizing and terrifying, the very essence of the unknown. Dr. Harlow quickly analyzed the ship's systems. This is not just a rift. It's a doorway. A portal. Her voice was laced with awe and apprehension. "The signal was leading us here. This is where the trial begins." The crew gathered at the central table, each one grappling with the implications. They had been given no guidance, no clear instructions. Only a cryptic message and a portal that beckoned them forward, into a domain where the rules of reality itself seemed to bend. "What happens if we enter?" Lieutenant Michael Grant asked, his voice low and uncertain. He was the ship's second-in-command, but like everyone else, he had no experience with what lay beyond the rift. "We don't know," Winters replied. "But if we don't go through, we may never get the chance to prove ourselves. To fail now, it could mean the end of humanity's future, forever." The crew nodded in solemn agreement. The decision had been made for them, they had no choice but to enter the unknown. With a collective sense of resolve, Captain Winters gave the order. Engage the portal. Prepare for entry. As the Odyssey slowly moved toward the rift, Dr. Harlow worked feverishly at the communications console, attempting to decode any further information from the signal. But there was nothing, just silence. The energy around them grew more intense, the portal's surface flashing with bursts of color, as though it were alive and aware of their approach. The moment the ship crossed the threshold, the universe seemed to collapse in on itself. Time and space bent in strange, impossible ways. The Odyssey was no longer traveling through normal space, it was being pulled into a realm that defied all known physics. The crew members felt as if they were being stretched and compressed simultaneously, their bodies vibrating with an energy they could not comprehend. The ship shook violently, its hull groaning under the strain, but there was no turning back now. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ship came to a halt. Everything was still. Outside the viewports, the crew was greeted by a sight that defied description. A massive, floating city stretched across the horizon, a sprawling metropolis that seemed to be suspended in a field of glowing energy. It was both organic and technological, with massive spires and twisting, fluid structures that defied any conventional understanding of architecture. The city pulsed with light, its energy radiating outward like a beacon. The Odyssey was not alone. Surrounding the city, countless ships, many far larger than their own, were floating in the same energy field, some suspended in place, others gliding effortlessly through the space around them. But it wasn't the ships that held their attention. It was the beings, or rather, the forms, moving through the city. These were not biological entities. They existed as glowing shapes, flowing patterns of energy that shifted and reformed at will. They were clearly sentient, but their forms were so alien, so far removed from anything humanity could imagine, that it was almost impossible to grasp the reality of what they were. And then, as if responding to the Odyssey's arrival, a new voice echoed in the minds of the crew, one that was not the same as the one they had heard before, but a more complex and layered presence. "Welcome to the threshold," the voice intoned. "You have passed through the first trial, but the path ahead is not certain. You will face challenges, decisions, and revelations that will test every aspect of your being. How you proceed from here will determine whether humanity ascends to the stars or falls into darkness." The crew stared in awe at the city ahead of them. The trial had only just begun, but they had no idea what lay in wait on the other side of this threshold. The Odyssey drifted silently through the energy field, its crew staring in awe at the vast, otherworldly city. The floating metropolis loomed before them, a testament to a civilization that had mastered not only space but the very nature of existence itself. The glowing forms that moved within it seemed almost ethereal, too alien to fully comprehend. Yet, they felt an undeniable sense of being watched, as though every movement, every breath, was being scrutinized by an intelligence far beyond their own. The voice that had spoken to them earlier now echoed through their minds once again. Unity is the foundation of ascension. You are not alone in this test, travelers of Earth. To succeed, you must embrace cooperation, compromise, and strength as one. Only through unity can you hope to survive what lies ahead. The voice faded, leaving behind a profound silence. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, each one aware that the test they were about to face would be far from easy. They had entered a realm where everything they knew about survival, about leadership, and about human strength would be put to the ultimate test. The alien civilization had warned them, but the message was clear: humanity would not be judged as individuals but as a collective. Captain Winters was the first to speak, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "It's clear we're being tested as a team, not just as individuals. This is more than a challenge of strength, it's a test of our ability to work together, to put aside our differences and act as one." Dr. Harlow nodded in agreement. "But how do we even begin to understand the rules of this test? What is it asking of us?" Before anyone could respond, the city ahead of them shimmered, and the portal they had passed through seemed to pulse with a new, more intense energy. A series of bright beams of light shot out from the city, converging on the Odyssey. The ship shook as the beams made contact, enveloping the vessel in a cocoon of energy. The crew watched in awe as the walls of the ship seemed to ripple and distort. And then, just as quickly as the sensation had come, it disappeared. "Captain, I think we're inside," Dr. Harlow said, her voice filled with wonder. The city was no longer just an image outside the viewports, it was now part of their reality. The ship had been drawn into the energy field, and they were no longer in the same place they had been moments before. The environment had changed completely. The once familiar interior of the Odyssey had transformed. The crew stood in what appeared to be a vast, open chamber. The walls were made of shifting energy patterns, glowing lines of light that flickered and pulsed with every movement they made. The floor beneath their feet was not solid, but rather a fluid surface that seemed to change its form as they stepped on it. The air felt charged with energy, making their hair stand on end. From the center of the chamber, a projection of a glowing, sentient being appeared. It was not a physical form, but a shape composed entirely of light and energy, shifting and pulsing as it communicated. Its presence was overwhelming, and yet, there was a sense of calm that radiated from it. "Welcome, travelers," the being intoned, its voice resonating in their minds. "You have passed through the threshold, but the true test begins now. You must prove your unity, for only through cooperation can you overcome the challenges ahead. Fail, and you will be lost to the void, like so many before you." The projection's form shifted again, becoming more fluid and intricate. "Before you is a choice, a test of your ability to work together. In the next chamber, you will face a series of challenges, each designed to test a different aspect of your collective strength. Your goal is not to succeed individually, but to succeed as one." The walls of the chamber around them began to dissolve, revealing a vast space beyond. A series of intricate pathways stretched out before them, each one leading to a different challenge. Some were steep and dangerous, others dark and treacherous. The crew had no idea what lay at the end of each path, but the projection's words were clear: success depended on their ability to navigate these obstacles together. "The first challenge begins now," the being announced, and suddenly, the room was filled with a harsh, blinding light. The crew instinctively shielded their eyes, but when the light faded, they saw something that made their hearts skip a beat. A massive chasm now separated them from the other side of the chamber. The gap was wide, too wide to jump, too deep to cross without a solution. The walls around them were slick and smooth, offering no clear handholds or footholds. But there, at the edge of the chasm, was a single platform. It floated in mid-air, suspended by an invisible force. "The platform is the key," the projection's voice echoed, its tone calm but firm. "Only by working together can you reach the other side. Use your knowledge, your strength, and your minds as one to find a solution." Captain Winters stepped forward, his mind already racing. "We need to get to that platform. But we can't do it alone. We'll need everyone's skills, everyone's perspective." The crew exchanged looks, and in that moment, the weight of their mission settled on their shoulders. They had always been individuals, working toward a common goal, but this trial demanded more. It demanded that they think, act, and succeed as one. "We'll need to pool our resources," Dr. Harlow said, her voice steady. "Engineer, physicist, military strategy, each of us has a unique strength. We must combine our knowledge and abilities." The team quickly began to strategize, working together to figure out how to reach the platform. The challenge wasn't just about physical strength or technical skill, it was about communicating, collaborating, and trusting one another in a way they had never done before. As the crew began to piece together a plan, they realized that the trial was not just about overcoming obstacles, but about testing the very essence of humanity, the ability to unify, to set aside personal differences, and to succeed as one. It was a challenge that would either elevate them to the next stage of their journey or condemn them to fail. The crew of the Odyssey stood at the edge of the chasm, staring at the floating platform across the divide. The challenge was not just about crossing the physical gap, but about proving that they could unite as a single, unbreakable force. There was no clear solution, no obvious way to solve the puzzle before them. And yet, the very essence of their humanity, their willingness to adapt and overcome, was on the line. "All right, let's think this through," Captain Winters said, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting on them. "We know the platform is key, but it's not going to come to us. We need to work together to make it accessible, and that means each of us needs to contribute in some way." Dr. Harlow stepped forward, her mind already racing. "We need to understand the energy signatures here. There's something at play beyond gravity. These walls are smooth, but they seem to pulse with energy. I suspect they can be manipulated if we have the right tools." Lieutenant Grant, the ship's second-in-command, spoke up. "I've seen this kind of energy manipulation in the systems on the ship. There might be a way to link our tech to the walls, maybe use electromagnetic pulses or gravitons to form a bridge. We could bridge the gap long enough for us to get to the platform." "Sounds good," Captain Winters said, his tone decisive. "We'll need to work fast. If we fail this test, it's not just our lives that will be lost, the fate of humanity might be sealed as well. We're not just solving a puzzle here, we're proving that humanity can stand together as one." The crew set to work. Dr. Harlow, with her deep knowledge of alien technologies, began studying the energy fields surrounding the chasm, tracing the electromagnetic signatures that radiated from the walls. "These pulses, they're not random. They're structured, almost like a code," she said. "I think if we can sync our technology with the energy in this space, we might be able to stabilize the platform's position and create a temporary bridge." Lieutenant Grant was already at a console, tapping into the ship's systems. "If we can recalibrate the Odyssey's energy flow to match these readings, we can create a temporary field that might act as a solid surface. But we'll need everyone on deck to keep it stable. If any of us falter, we risk losing everything." The team worked in synchrony, a delicate dance of cooperation and quick thinking. Each person brought their unique skills to the table. Dr. Harlow's deep understanding of the alien energy fields, Lieutenant Grant's expertise with technology and energy systems, and Captain Winters' strategic leadership all came together in a moment of seamless unity. They had no time for hesitation, no time for second-guessing, they had to act as one. The chamber around them pulsed in response to their efforts, the energy in the walls vibrating as their plans took shape. The platform, once distant and unreachable, now began to shimmer and hover closer. The energy bridge that had been formed started to stabilize, and they had only a few moments to cross before it collapsed. "Now!" Captain Winters commanded, his voice firm. "Move!" One by one, the crew stepped onto the energy bridge. As they moved, the ground beneath their feet shifted and rippled, but the field held. Dr. Harlow was the first to reach the platform, followed closely by Lieutenant Grant. Captain Winters, ever the leader, ensured that the rest of the crew was safely across, guiding them with the calm assurance that had earned him their trust. Just as the last crew member crossed, the energy bridge flickered and collapsed into nothingness. The platform hovered once more, but they had succeeded. Together, they had overcome the first trial. For a moment, they stood in silence, breathing heavily from the intense physical and mental effort. The Odyssey crew had proven that they could work together, that they could set aside individual ambitions and fears in order to accomplish the impossible. "Well done," the projection's voice echoed through the chamber, its tone filled with a sense of approval. "You have passed the first challenge. But be warned, this was merely a test of unity. The path ahead will test your resolve, your courage, and your belief in each other. The true trial has only just begun." As the projection faded, the walls of the chamber shifted once more, revealing a new pathway, a narrow, winding corridor filled with flickering lights and shifting shadows. The next challenge awaited, and it was clear that it would be even more difficult than the last. But the crew of the Odyssey had learned something crucial: they were no longer just a collection of individuals. They were a team. And together, they had proven they could face anything that stood in their way. With newfound resolve, Captain Winters led his crew forward. They had passed the first trial, but there were still more challenges ahead. Their journey to prove humanity's place among the stars was far from over, but they now knew that as long as they stood together, they had a chance. The narrow corridor stretched before them, its walls shifting with strange patterns of light and shadow. The energy pulses from before had subsided, leaving the crew in a heavy silence. Their bodies were tired from the exertion, their minds sharp with the anticipation of the next trial. The first test had been one of unity, but now the real challenge was clear. The trial would test their courage, their resolve, and the very essence of what made them human. The crew had proved that they could work together as a team. But could they endure what was to come? As they moved forward, the walls began to close in around them. The space ahead grew smaller, more claustrophobic. The soft hum of the ship's systems was the only sound, until, suddenly, the projection reappeared before them. The glowing, energy-based being hovered in the air, its form shifting like a living nebula, as if the very fabric of the universe was contained within it. "You have passed the first test," the being intoned, its voice resonating with an otherworldly presence. "Unity, cooperation, these are essential to your survival. But now, you must face what lies at the heart of this trial. The final judgment awaits." The crew gathered around, their hearts heavy. The being's words had hinted at something far more difficult than anything they had encountered. "What do you mean by the final judgment?" Captain Winters asked, his voice steady despite the unease rippling through him. The projection's form shifted again, and a new vision appeared before them. It was a holographic representation of Earth, their home, beautiful and fragile, floating in the vastness of space. But there was something wrong. A shadow loomed over the planet, a massive and unknowable presence that seemed to be drawing closer with every passing second. The world trembled, its future uncertain. "You have come to this place, seeking to join a greater order, a future among the stars," the voice continued. "But do you truly understand the responsibility that comes with this? Do you comprehend the weight of the choice you are about to make?" Captain Winters looked at his crew, their faces filled with concern. "What is the choice?" The projection's voice grew deeper, more intense. "The choice is simple, but the consequences are far-reaching. Should you succeed, your civilization will be given access to knowledge and power beyond your understanding. You will ascend, becoming part of a collective that spans the cosmos. But failure will mean the destruction of your world and the loss of all that you have ever known." The shadow over Earth grew darker, closer, as the projection's warning resonated in their minds. "You must decide," the voice continued, "whether to embrace this power, this ascension, and trust in the path that has been laid out before you. Or to turn away, remaining in your world, bound by its limitations, and face whatever fate awaits you." The crew stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on them like an unbearable force. For humanity to succeed, they had to choose, to embrace the unknown, to step into a new era of existence, or to remain on Earth, bound to the familiar, even if it meant losing the chance to reach the stars. The question was more than philosophical. It was a matter of survival. If they chose ascension, they would face dangers and challenges that no one had ever encountered. They would become part of something greater, but would they lose their humanity in the process? If they chose to remain behind, they would forfeit the chance to join the stars, but they would retain their independence, their free will. Captain Winters turned to his crew, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the projection. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also the fire of determination. These were the people who had faced the impossible before, who had already proven themselves worthy of this journey. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy," Winters said, his voice firm. "We came here because we believed humanity has a future among the stars. But it's not just about the stars. It's about what we do with this opportunity. Do we go forward with the knowledge that we will face trials and tests beyond anything we've known? Do we embrace the challenge of becoming something more than we are? Or do we retreat into the safety of the familiar and leave this opportunity behind?" Dr. Harlow stepped forward, her voice calm and thoughtful. "Humanity has always been about exploring the unknown. It's in our nature to reach beyond ourselves, to grow, to evolve. This is our chance to prove we're worthy of that next step." Lieutenant Grant nodded. "We've come this far together. We're stronger than we've ever been. And I believe that's what makes us human, our ability to adapt, to face challenges head-on, no matter how difficult they may seem. Captain Winters looked back at the projection. We choose to ascend. We choose to embrace the future, no matter the cost. Humanity will not shy away from the unknown. We'll face whatever comes, together. The projection's form shimmered, as if reflecting their decision. The shadow over Earth began to dissipate, replaced by a growing light that enveloped the planet. The cosmic rift that had once seemed like a barrier now opened up, revealing a vast network of stars, a gateway to the universe. You have made your choice, the projection said, its voice reverberating with approval. Humanity has proven that it is worthy. You will join the stars, and your journey will be one of infinite possibilities. But remember, the path you have chosen will be fraught with challenges. You must remain united, for only together will you be able to overcome the trials ahead. As the projection faded into the light, the Odyssey and its crew found themselves in a new and unknown realm, a place that was both terrifying and magnificent. The stars beckoned them forward, a new dawn for humanity. Captain Winters stood at the helm, looking out at the vast, uncharted expanse of space. He could feel the weight of their decision, but he also felt something else, a sense of pride, of hope. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars. The journey had only just begun. And as the Odyssey sailed toward the future, one thing was certain: they would face whatever came next, together.